Go ahead.
Okay, I've started the recording.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome everybody to our special meeting here at the end of March. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, I've shared the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
a
nation,
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So roll call, please.
Albrecht,
Here, Union Township, Isabella County, Mount Pleasant.
Buckley,
Here, Union Township, Isabella County, Mount Pleasant.
Lapp,
Here, Union Township, Isabella County.
Shingles,
Here, Union Township, Isabella County.
Squatrito,
Here, and I'm currently in the city of Mount Pleasant in Isabella County.
and we have excused Darren, Fuller, and LaBelle. And we've heard that Cody will be late.
Okay, thank you. So we did meet on March 16th. That was our regular meeting, and the minutes were in your packet. So we'll go ahead and look at the minutes for March 16th. Are there any corrections to the March 16th minutes? I have a very minor one, which is that, as was correctly noted on here, Commissioner Cody was not at that meeting, but she's listed as giving us an update under correspondence and reports and such. So if we want to be accurate, I guess we should strike that. Anything else? Otherwise, I mean, it was quite an extensive set of minutes because there was a lot of activity at that meeting, and it looked good to me.
Move to accept the minutes with the minor correction.
I'll second.
Motion by Shingles to accept the minutes as amended with a second by Lapp. Further discussion? I'll just ask for a voice and or hand signal. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And so I'm going to say that that motion carried. So we have our minutes. Let's see. So next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. So if Lisa's able to make it and if she wants to report something, we'll double back to this later. I'm assuming ZBA hasn't met since the beginning of since our last meeting.
That's correct.
All right. And then Mike Darren's not here. So any other presentations or correspondence that township staff are aware of?
The only thing I'll mention is that for the sidewalk committee, they were supposed to meet on the 23rd of March. They did not have a quorum at the last minute for that, and so they rescheduled that meeting for April 7th, and intending to take care of things at that time. The other thing I'll mention with the sidewalks committee is I understand we do have one application for the vacancy on that committee that will be coming to you at your April meeting to take a look at.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks for that update. Any questions from commissioners? Okay. So the next item is approval of agenda. So the agenda has 4 new business items, well, 5 new business items on it. Well, I should say 4 new business items and 1 recurring business item on it. Any other items that anyone is aware of that needs to be on tonight's agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Support.
So motion was by Albrecht with a second by Buckley to approve the agenda as prepared. Further discussion? Again, I'll just ask for voice and or hand signal. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passed as well. So we approved our agenda so we can continue to exist. All right, so the next item is public comment. So we always have towards the beginning of the meeting, a public comment that is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. We do have a public hearing. So if anyone is here for the public hearing on the rezone, that's going to be a separate item that'll be taken when we get to that point. But this would be for items that are not on tonight's agenda. And then later, towards the end of the meeting, we have an open public comment for anything. So at this time, public comment is invited on items that are not on tonight's agenda. We ask you, if you want to make a public comment, hit your raise hand button. We'll recognize you and allow you to speak. Give us your name and address for the minutes, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comment is open at 7:09. And seeing none, I'm going to assume that our attendees are either here for the projects or for the entertainment. And so we'll go ahead and close the public comment also at 7:09. So we're ready to move on to new business. So the first new business item is if you remember at our March meeting, we had election of officers, but there was a little glitch. And so we didn't elect the vice secretary because wasn't on the agenda that we went ahead and approved. So we added it to this agenda, but a person that would likely to be nominated for vice secretary is not here. And there's actually 3 people that are not here. So I wonder if it might make sense to postpone that and do it at our regular April meeting. We could do it now and people could nominate other people, but there are people here or not here that might want to be nominated. So I want to do it at a time when everybody has that opportunity. Any thoughts?
I agree. I think that's a good plan.
Okay. I guess I guess it's a Robert's Rules question or procedural question. If this item is on our agenda, do we specifically need a motion to postpone or can we just skip it?
I would recommend that you have a motion to postpone till your April 20th meeting.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion to do just that.
I move to postpone this agenda item until the next planning commission meeting.
Is there a second?
Support.
Was that? Okay, that was Buckley? Okay. To my ears, you and Stan don't sound that different. Both have the kind of baritone or whatever. So, all right. So the motion was by Lapp, second by Buckley to postpone election of the vice secretary until our next regularly scheduled meeting, which as noted is April 20th. Further discussion? All right, because this is in the business section, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote just because we've been doing that for our actual business items.
Buckley,
Yes.
Shingles,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Lapp,
Yes.
and Squattrito.
Yes.
So that motion's gonna carry 5-0.
Okay. I see Stan has his hand up. Is that for this? or-
Yeah, I just had just a quick question. And I assume that we do have a quorum. I just wasn't sure. Is Commissioner Cody a voting member?
She's a
We
vote-
have,
She's a voting member and we have 5 out of 9.
So simple majority is okay, I wasn't sure. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to our next item. This is a rezone request. PREZ 21-02. Application to rezone 2266 Northway Drive, which is on the west side of Northway Drive, north of Venture Way, from B7 to I2. So I'll turn it over to Rodney for an introduction, then we'll move to the public hearing, and then we'll move on to deliberation and action.
thank you. This is coming before you tonight for a public hearing at the request of the property owner to rezone the property. As was mentioned, it's currently zone B7. This lot, is part of what was called Lot 5 of Enterprise Park, which was an industrial park subdivision that was originally created in the very late 1970s. In your packet, you have a copy of the original plat layout and some documentation for the industrial subdivision from that time. More recently, when the Home Depot was developed, there apparently was a need for stormwater management, a detention basin, and Home Depot apparently acquired the front part of the original Lot 5 and developed their stormwater management facility there. The property was rezoned at that time to B7 to match the Home Depot commercial zoning. Unfortunately, it appears that they've rezoned the entire parcel. So that included the existing industrial building on the back half of the lot. That rezoning to B7 was carried over when the master plan was last updated. The master plan designation was set as commercial retail service as well for this existing industrial building. The building itself has a history of industrial uses, light manufacturing, warehouse type activities, and has not been used for commercial purposes. So the applicant is proposing to rezone the property occupied by the existing building to I2, which would match the bulk of the rest of the Enterprise Park and Industrial Park development. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions at this time from commissioners? Okay, if not, then we can move to the public hearing. So all rezone requests come with a public hearing at the Planning Commission. And so we want to give everyone who wants to speak, and it's been in the paper and appropriate property owners have been notified. We want to give everyone who wants to speak on this topic an opportunity to speak. So we'll ask people who want to speak to indicate that desire, and then electronic arrangements will be made to give people that opportunity. Once it's open, we'll ask people as they're recognized to give us your name and address for the minutes, address your comments to the Planning Commission, and at least limit your initial comments to 3 minutes. And then once everyone who wants to speak has had an opportunity to speak, we'll consider recognizing people for additional comments if appropriate. So the public hearing on rezone request 21-02 is open at 7:16. Are there individuals who would like to offer a public comment?
James McBride has his hand raised.
Okay, then let's recognize Mr. McBride.
Can you hear me okay?
We do, we hear you.
Good. Well, thank you, members of the Planning Commission, for recognizing me. Yes, I'd like to address this 2266 Northway Drive property, 1.92 acres. As Rodney stated, it's the back part of Lot 5. This request is coming at this time And by the way, thank you so much for doing the special meeting to consider this. We have a company that, the company has asked us not to identify who they are at this particular time, but you would all recognize the name as soon as I said it, if I did. That is very interested in this property from a standpoint of a distribution center. And of course, the current zoning would not allow it. This is a company that would be looking at 40 to maybe up to 50 jobs in the very near future if this is approved, with the possibility of further expansion down the road. These points are covered in Ryan Smith's letter to you. I think it's on page 25 of your packet. And he covers these points in point number 6 and point number 7, that we're looking at 40 to 50 jobs and the possibility of additional jobs in the township. Oh, by the way, I should mention I didn't give you my address, did I? I am a resident of Union Township, 2130 Flagstone Court, Mount Pleasant, Michigan, 48858, James McBride, and I'm president and CEO of Middle Michigan Development Corporation. So I would strongly urge the commission to adopt this change, which is necessary if we're going to be able to land this company.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? I should mention that the applicant's representative will have an opportunity to address us and stand for questions separately from the public hearing. So, but any members of the public who would like to address the commission on this application, any other members of the public? Was there any written correspondence received on this application?
No, we did not receive any written correspondence.
Okay, thank you. So second call for other public comments on the application. And last call, public comments. Okay, well, we certainly appreciate the public comment. It's always welcome and encouraged. So seeing no further ones, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:20. And the minutes will reflect that public comment was in fact offered during the public hearing. At this point, we've got updates from staff and the applicant. We've heard from Rodney. Unless there's anything that you have to add at this time, I'll give Mr. Smith the opportunity to address us if he'd like to do so.
I've asked Mr. Smith to unmute.
Yep, I'm here if anybody has any questions. I believe that my application thoroughly details the reasoning behind this request, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission if there are any.
Okay, thank you. So, so now we move to commission deliberation and action. This is a rezone request, so our actions would be either recommend, it's a recommendation, so it's either recommend approval or denial to the Board of Trustees or postpone action. So it's before us, it's open for discussion and or questions.
Mr. Buckley has his hand raised.
Yes, Ryan?
Yeah, I no questions, just a comment. I think that the presentation by both Rodney and what we've got in the materials are very straightforward. I don't have any concerns whatsoever with rezoning this to the I-2 to conform with the other parcels nearby.
And this is, I mean, the parcel's an odd shape. This is in fact this is the borders of the parcel itself.
Yes, this would be rezoning that odd shape, basically the back half of lot 5 with the little flag portion going out to the road. So it is a legal non-conforming lot. It could not be created today, but it certainly can be used and as a legal non-conforming lot.
Okay. And maybe I saw this in the materials. The reason it's shaped that way, or one reason, is because that other piece is part of the water detention system for Home Depot. Is that right?
That is correct. That is the reason it was done that way. Home Depot needed that land in the front apparently for stormwater management, and so they divided off that front portion where the detention basin is, and incorporated it into the Home Depot property.
Okay. Other comments from commissioners? I mean, certainly it's not, you know, it's simply an extension of the existing zoning to the, help me out, to the south. And so it, you know, I agree with Commissioner Buckley. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree with Ryan and or Commissioner Buckley and Commissioner Squadrito. But I have a question for Rodney, just in regard to making a motion. Would we, if we recommend approval, would we need to include all of the findings and conclusions for the trustees?
I would recommend that you do include the findings. Basically, anytime that you're making a decision like this, whether it's a site plan approval or rezoning recommendation, you always want to essentially put the why behind your decision right in the motion, so it becomes part of the record for that action. Lisa Cody has just joined us.
Oh, excellent. Welcome.
I guess I'll make one additional comment related to that question. Part of the reason that you see in the proposed motions, you see a number of findings under the recommendation for approval, is that this is still, even if it seems completely logical, it is still an action against your own master plan, which identifies this area as being for retail service. So it is, you know, it is an appropriate action, and in fact, the zoning ordinance envisions that a possibility that you might be recommending against your own master plan where conditions have changed or an error has been perpetuated. That's, you know, that's some of the language from the findings and facts section of the ordinance. It is still important to put a good strong foundation under why you're making the decision that doesn't back up your master plan. And so that's really why we have all 6 of those potential findings. They kind of give a well-rounded foundation underneath that choice.
Do you, how easy or difficult would it be to pull up the future land use map and blow up this section? What we have in our printed version is pretty small. I don't want to drag this out unnecessarily, but I'm just kind of curious to look at that.
Yeah. Give me just a moment. I will collect that page. think this, well, the map I pulled up first happens to be the lower resolution version. Let me see if it. Yeah, let me see if I can get a better version of the file. All right. Just another moment here. Almost got it. All right. Share my screen. So you can see US 127 here with Pickard Road interchange. And this is the parcel right here. This is the Home Depot property. Here's the detention basin out front. And this piece right back here is the piece we're looking at.
Okay. And the purple, of course, is in fact the industrial.
It is, yes.
Okay. So it's really just that it probably because it was B7 at the time, it got lumped in with that. So, okay. I mean, when you say it's against our master plan, I see what you're saying and why you're saying it, but it's not like it's off in the middle of nowhere on the master plan. I mean, they're adjacent uses, so.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, that's really what I wanted to confirm. So I appreciate that.
Mhm.
All right, so as Rodney mentioned, and this, if I think some of our newer commissioners have probably already figured this out, and it's really not a secret that as a best practice, township staff has for a while been preparing draft motions for us, which include, as appropriate, a variety of findings. Now, as commissioners, we're the ones who vote on this, so we're always free to disagree with the findings, to substitute our own findings. But of course, they have to be defensible, and we have to be able to justify them. But that's why they're there. And so if we do agree with the findings, then we typically end up reading the motion as prepared, just so that it ends up in the official action, and then it's incorporated into the minutes that way.
Mr. Buckley has his hand raised.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. You had your hand up for a while. So Ryan.
No, I'm actually just ready to make a motion. I was just being patient with you as you kind of went through the details there. I was just curious before I make a motion with Commissioner Cody just kind of stepping in the middle of this. Do we, is there any concern about making a motion without bringing Commissioner Cody up to speed or anything like that? Or can we go right into it?
Well, let's ask her. We're in item B of the new business, the rezone request on the property on Northway Drive.
I read through everything.
Okay.
We're all right.
Pretty much.
Well, in that case, I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the Township Board of Trustees that PREZ 21-02 zoning map amendment to rezone the 1.92 acre parcel at 2266 Northway Drive, PID number 14-152-00-005-02 from B7 retail and Service Highway Business District to I2 General Industrial District be adopted based on the following findings and conclusions. Number one, this site is located in the East Downtown Development Authority District and in the Enterprise Park and Industrial Park development. Number two, there is no demand for the building at 2266 Northway Drive to be used for retail, service, or other commercial uses. Number three, the design and historic use of the existing building for office, warehouse, and light manufacturing activities. I think it is far more, yes, is far more consistent with the character of the I2 district than the regional commercial character of the B7 district. Number four, there is a pressing need for flex space buildings suitable for office, warehouse, and light manufacturing business development, and for additional land zoned for industrial uses in locations with easy access to state highways. Number five, it appears that the existing industrial building at 2266 Northway Drive may have inadvertently been included in the B7 rezoning to support use of the front portion of Enterprise Parks Lot 5 for Home Depot's stormwater management facilities. This commercial classification was later carried over into the updated master plan. And number six, the proposed rezoning will not create any special privilege resulting in unlawful exclusionary zoning or set an inappropriate precedent.
The motion has been made. Is there by Buckley? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lapp. Further discussion? If not, if you're ready to vote on the motion, I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Squatrito,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Buckley,
Yes.
Shingles,
Yes.
Lapp,
Yes.
and Cody.
Yes.
The motion's carried 6-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with the project. All right, so we'll move on to our next item. This is a preliminary site plan review. PSPR 21-04 McGurk Mini Storage Phase 2. And so we'll turn it over for an introduction.
Thank you. Everyone should have our site plan report dated March 16th. As was noted, this is phase 2 of the McGurk mini storage development. Phase 1 has been up and operating for some time. So this is being developed directly to the south of the existing phase 1 project. The applicant has made some adjustments to building layout. They are responding to some market conditions, and so they have adjusted some the buildings in terms of how they lay out. The sizes are going to be a little bit different from phase 1. Overall, we found the site plan to be generally in good order. We had one informational issue that's on the top of page 2 of our report. There's just that there was a note talking about the property being zoned R3A. That dates back to the earlier project when the property hadn't been rezoned yet, so that just asked that note to be removed. We did note some parking that needed to be provided based on the parking standards of the ordinance, and also some adjustments. There's some preliminary landscaping. Landscaping is not a required item for preliminary site plan approval, but they did show some landscaping on the plan. So we had some comments on that. Just made a note about the size of the trees at planting. And we also made some notes about the final site plan details that will be taken care of when the project comes back to you for final site plan approval. So overall, we found the site plan to be generally complete and ready for preliminary site plan approval. And we've recommended approval of the preliminary site plan. We've noted 3 conditions that we would ask for your consideration on. One is just addressing the items of information. Second one, addressing the landscaping detail. And then the third one was a request that everything be on the site plan set. What this is referring to is some exterior lighting information that was submitted separately And we've asked that all the details be part of the set that's on the site plan. So it's clear that's part of the information that is approved as part of site plan approval. So we'll be looking for those exterior lighting details to be incorporated into the final site plan document itself. And so with that, happy to answer any questions you may have. We do have with us Tim Beebe, project engineer. So.
Okay. Well, let me just ask if there are any questions from commissioners for Rodney at this time. If not, then go ahead and import Mr. Beebe, and then we'll give him an opportunity to speak and stand for questions.
I've asked him to unmute. He's all set.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening. Unfortunately, when he added me to the thing, it blanked out and I lost everything there for a second. So am I in the position to review the project at this point, Rodney?
You are, yep.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, but it cut out on me. This is a project that you've seen before. We have an approved site plan on this with special use. The building square footages have basically all stayed the same. However, in the northeast corner of phase 2, there's been a couple changes. We brought the roadway in directly off of the existing private drive instead of tying through to the north and taking out 2 of the bins. So it'll be a straight shot in off that private road into the project. That will be a gated entrance. The entire project will be fenced. It'll have the black chain link fence to match the phase 1 portion of the project. As far as parking spaces, that's something that we will add there in the northeast corner. There is no office for the storage units on this portion of the site, but we don't have any issue. We've got lots of room to put parking stripes there. I'm not sure that they'll ever be used, but we'll definitely show those. As far as the landscaping, I thought that I had read that section correctly, but Rodney and I will go over that, make sure that the landscape detail gets revised to match the zoning. We've gone through our some of our outside approvals. We have, I believe, the fire department, the road commission. I've met with the drain office since this was the project had already been reviewed for stormwater in the past. It was a fairly simple process to go through with Mr. Rohr. Lighting for final site plan approval, we will be submitting a photometric plan, which will detail out the light fixtures and also the foot candles as it goes across the site to light the site. So that we will make sure is in the final documents. Really, the biggest change in this is if you look at the buildings that are being proposed in the northeast corner. And attached to the site plan set, you'll see that what we're doing is providing storage units, both that are 40-foot wide and 80-foot wide, that have much taller doors. The storage units that are in phase 1 and are proposed for 80% of phase 2 are more your standard storage units. These have 14-foot doors in them so that they are, you can bring in the large campers, larger boats, things of that sort. And it's just like Rodney said, it's a different niche to the storage unit market. And that's why it's being proposed. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, so applicant's representative is here and is standing for questions. So It's open for discussion and deliberation by the commission. I guess I have a couple questions. One I'll ask first. So on the first page of your plan, under, it says, there's a little box, it says flood zone certification. And it says that the property is located within an area having a zone designation of A by the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development on flood insurance rate map, et cetera, et cetera. Do you know what that means? I mean, what is A? Is A good? Is that low risk, high risk?
Flood zone A means that there is not a report done to establish a floodplain.
Oh,
So if you are in areas that are less than 500 acres, by definition, there is not the potential of a floodplain. If you remember the site on Crawford Road, south of Deerfield, it's the subdivision that's back there that we did, geez, it's got to be 15, 16 years ago, Saddle Drive, Stirrup.
hmm.
That was in a zone A also. And we had to go through and show that the contributing area was less than 500 acres. If it was less than 500 acres, then it can't have a floodplain. This is another one of those areas that there is probably less than 120 acres in this drainage district. But when FEMA comes through and does their mapping, Union Township was mapped and did have a study on it, but this area they showed there were a couple pockets that they said, who knows, maybe it does have a floodplain. Well, in this case, because of the size of the drainage area, it doesn't even qualify for that. So, but that's what's shown on the FEMA map, so that's what I show on my plans.
Okay. So that the drainage area that you include, which essentially is taking the place of what could be at least two of the other buildings, is, I mean, I guess how would you characterize that? Are you
The runoff,
generous in the retention capability?
yeah, it's overly generous actually, Phil. But let's take a step back a little bit. Union Township's stormwater management requires you, if you develop a piece of property, to retain back to 1/10 of a CFS per acre. If it were a farm field, fairly level, didn't have a lot of contour to it, the runoff from a farm field is 0.25. Union Township's requirements is to retain back to 0.1. So no matter what you end up doing, when their development comes in, you are actually discharging off at a lesser rate than what natural is. And the reason for that is storm sewer systems were put in long ago, not anticipating all the growth that has happened. And like we saw in the city 2 years ago, there was major flooding. Well, that's because they kept developing and developing and developing. They had the old system in there that was sized back when everything was a farm field, but they didn't provide for detention for a number of years. Union Township's policy is 0.1. The city's right now is 0.15. So Union Township has what would be considered the most restrictive stormwater policy in the area. So you are requiring that the runoff from the site in its entirety must be taken and held and discharged at a rate that is 40% of what natural is. So to start off with, your policy makes sure that you're not discharging more than was there before. The detention pond as proposed not only holds the 25-year, but it holds the 100-year storm and still has 2 feet of freeboard over and above the 100-year storm. So we have all kinds of volume for detention. I made it extra large because if the parcel to the east were ever developed, we've got a roadway right there. It would be a good place to see the first development portion. I could put 5 acres in there and not even dent that detention area. So it's just a little planning ahead, and making sure we've maxed out the building density on the site. We couldn't put more buildings on here if we wanted to. So we're utilizing the natural contour of the land, which is lower, and putting it into detention.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yep.
Thanks for the explanation. Other questions from commissioners? While people are thinking about that, I guess I was also wondering if you could just remind me, because I didn't actually dig out the previous various documents that we've looked at on this project, but that new road, is that running just to the south of this, or is that completely somewhere else?
That new road.
The one that is emptying out onto Lincoln, the one that
Yeah.
it's been dug, it's actually there.
Yeah, no, that's quite a ways to the south of this, south and east.
All right. Ryan.
I can't recall. Are there sidewalks on the existing private drive that feeds this particular site?
No, there aren't sidewalks on any of the private drives.
I'm curious, maybe Rodney has an answer. You know, if we're at some point, once this is kind of built out, understanding these are private drives, you know, if you have a connection on, you know, sidewalks that are north and south on Lincoln, or, you know, potentially connecting to Arboretum at some point, well, how do we as a township treat private drives and the requirement for sidewalks?
Well, we had to actually had this conversation with the applicant when they came in with that private drive extension that we were just talking about that goes around the Arboretum Apartments and down to Lincoln. And we discussed that although the sidewalk would not be required as part of that initial private road project, because our private road ordinance does not address that topic, the sidewalks would be required when the land associated with that road, what Mr. Beebe was just talking about, the land to the east of this, if that land is developed, that the sidewalks would be required at that time. And we would require that they connect the sidewalks through to integrate with our public sidewalk system. So it would mean installing sidewalks along those internal roads to connect out to the public sidewalks, whether that's to Remus Road or Lincoln or both.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Again, this is a preliminary site plan review, so we will get it back again in final form, possibly, I'm assuming relatively soon, probably. But we do want to make sure that if there are things that they get noted at this time.
Yeah, the only thing that might hold it up from coming right back to you is I do have to get the plan and profiles reviewed by the DPW department, and we do have to have the photometrics done. So it's going to be dependent on how fast I can get the photometrics done and how fast I can get the review done through DPW.
And again, you do have a set of motions in your packet. I guess I'll ask another question. Do you happen to know what the occupancy rate is of the existing buildings?
They don't start a new building on phase one. As we built from east to west, they would start the next building when they reached 80% occupancy. So as they march through, once they hit 80%, they built the next building, and then they continued to build the next building. And that's the way that you'll see this on 80% of it. The different style buildings up in the northeast are going to be the first ones to be built at phase two.
So are you it would be a reasonable assumption then that collectively the existing buildings are at least 80% occupied?
Yep, and that's why he's getting ready for the phase two portion.
Any other questions? We can have a motion at any time.
Mr. Buckley has his hand raised.
I will recognize Commissioner Buckley.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with conditions. Motion to approve the PSPR 21-04 preliminary site plan from McGirt Mini Storage, Inc. for the phase two development of additional self-storage buildings located at the west end of Lexi Lane in the northeast quarter of section 20 and in the B5 Highway Business Zoning District, finding that the February 23rd, 2021 site plan can comply with applicable zoning ordinance requirements for preliminary site plan approval, including sections 14.2.p, required site plan information, and 14.2.s, standards for site plan approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, provide the missing items of required application and site plan information noted in the staff report as part of the final site plan submittal in section 14.2p, required site plan information. Number two, revise the landscaping, screening, and parking details noted in the staff report as part of the final site plan submittal. And number three, all final site plan information shall be provided in a consolidated set without separate attachments or addendums and with all sheets referenced on the cover sheet.
Okay, that was the motion by Commissioner Buckley. Is there a second?
Support.
Second by Cody. Further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Lap,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Buckley,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Squattrito,
Yes.
and Jingles.
Yes.
That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Yep,
you.
thank you. And I'm not really a mathematician or statistician, but I guess there's a part of me that wants to know what the system is. I don't know. I haven't figured it out. I want to know. All right. All right. So next item is annual review of the bylaws. All right. As I mentioned, one of the things that they told us at the MAP risk management workshop that I attended was all planning commissions ought to have bylaws, and we have a nice set of bylaws, but they always are should be reviewed on a regular basis. And if we want to, we can always make changes. So let me turn it over to Rodney for an introduction.
Well, thank you. You have in your packet the set of adopted bylaws for the Planning Commission. As you said, this is a good opportunity just to take a look and see if there's anything that you would like to make changes on or adjustments on. The reason this came up now was because of discussion at a previous meeting about the order of business, which is on page 3, or it's page 82 of your packet, page 3 of the bylaws. Item E at the top of the page is the title agenda, and it lists the order of business. And I think there was a question about the location of the approval of the agenda within that order of business. And so this would be, if you would like to make an adjustment to that, this would be the time to identify any change, and we'll update the document and bring it back to you at your next meeting to consider for approval.
So just as an example, if the feeling was that the agenda ought to be approved before we do anything on the agenda, would we put it right after roll call then?
Yes, that's what I would recommend, if we put it after number 3, roll call.
Okay, what do people think about that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because you would have to establish quorum before you can take any action. So the roll call would establish the quorum.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion?
Are
we trying to amend this tonight, or what's the?
So the way this process works would be tonight you would identify any changes you'd like to make. Whenever we're updating the bylaws, we introduce it at one meeting, and then you can take action at the next. So we've introduced the bylaws on the agenda for potential change at this meeting. I would recommend that any changes you'd like to make be done as a motion. And then we would update the bylaws and give it back to you at your next meeting for your approval. And then if you adopt the updated bylaws, the final action would be the Board of Trustees. They have final approval over the bylaws, and so following any action you take, the bylaws will be presented to the Board of Trustees for their acceptance.
So I think that was a way of saying, yes, we could have a motion on this change.
I'm sorry, that was the long way of saying.
Oh, no,
yes.
that's the way that was what he had asked, and I think the answer is yes, from what I heard.
Yes.
I move that the Planning Commission agenda order be revised to move the approval of the agenda to number 4 after the roll call.
I'll support that.
Okay, so that motion was made by Lapp with a second by Shingles. Just other discussion on this particular motion? Buckley.
Just curious if there's any other changes that we're looking at, if they should all be, if it's necessary for them to be adopted or to be motioned one at a time, or motioned as a group. I don't know if it makes a difference or not.
You can have individual motions. That's certainly fine if you'd like to address this item, and then if you have any others, you can have a separate motion for those changes.
Yeah, I wasn't intending to close off the discussion. I think to me, I guess it makes sense to do them separately if they're dealing with separate issues. Other discussion on this particular motion? If not, then I will ask for a roll call. It's an official action.
Buckley,
Yes.
Shingles,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Lap,
Yes.
Albrecht,
yes,
and Squattrito.
Yes,
That motion carries 6-0.
okay. Would I be out of order if I asked you how you pick your lottery ticket numbers?
It's all random.
Okay. I want to make a couple of, on page 1, I'd just like to correct a couple of typos. Under membership, so Roman numeral 2, item A, it'd be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line. When the term of, I'm assuming it should just be a member. So there's a redundant article in there. Either the or the a needs to go. I think the should go. And then under Roman numeral 3, officers, line 3, it says we're listing the officers: chairperson, vice chairperson, secretary, vice secretary. The comma after vice secretary should be a period.
I would also suggest adding an and before vice secretary.
Yeah, because there's only the 4.
We don't need a motion for typos, but we'll certainly make those corrections for you.
Okay. There was one that I wanted to just bring up. I don't have a definite opinion one way or the other, but just reminiscing about things. We've had some awfully long meetings at times, and there's nothing in here that. So the question in my mind is, you get an agenda, and the agenda has all these items on it, and in particular, applications from applicants. And, if we ever have a meeting again where we get past 10 o'clock, maybe we get past 11 o'clock, is there any point at which we would ever want to just kind of say, we can't go on any further, we've lost our ability to function properly? So I'm thinking, what I kind of was conceiving was whether you would add something to like special rules that would say, once a meeting passes 3 hours in length, it may be truncated, suspended, terminated by a majority vote of the planning commission, something like that.
I think it would be important then for the staff to alert anyone who has a proposal or anything in front of the commission who's in that perhaps long list. Let them know that this is a part of the policy, so that they know that their proposal may not get action on that particular meeting if the meeting goes too long.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I'm not, I have mixed feelings about this because, and once we got past that point, we haven't had those really long meetings again. So to some extent, you kind of control it with how you manage the agenda. But on the other hand, I guess I just wanted to throw that out there for your consideration.
I think that actually, I know we haven't had, in my tenure, we've had a handful of very long meetings. And I think that even though they may be infrequent, I think that it's an important thing to have, because typically when you're having that long meeting, you're in the midst of something, you're deliberating something that is very complex or contentious or that sort of thing. And I do think it's important to have a safeguard for commissioners to essentially not become exhausted or burned out or just giving in on a particular issue because the meeting is drawn on too long. So I would certainly be supportive, and I think 3 hours is an appropriate time frame. I'd definitely be supportive of adding language like that in that allows us to have a formal way to bring an end to the meeting and and table whatever's left until the next meeting.
Okay. Then, if it, unless there's unless there's a different opinion, I guess what I'd like to do is ask Rodney and or Peter to take a stab at maybe drafting something that would serve that end, that would be appropriate language for having in this type of document, and that would, you know, take into account the other concerns and issues that have been raised with regard to, you know, making sure it's clear to not just us, but to applicants and, you know, those sorts of things.
Okay. We certainly can do that.
And one other thing that occurred to me, and again, this goes back to that, that workshop. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, that at the workshop, a person asked about conflicts of interest, and on the presenter's slide, she had being an employee of an applicant as a conflict of interest. Now, I don't know if that was just her opinion or if that is in fact a you know, a commonly accepted one. It's not currently in ours, which is why every time we have something from Alex's employer, which of course he's not here tonight, he has to go through the process again of excusing himself, and we have to operate with item 4, which says there is a reasonable appearance of a conflict of interest as determined by a majority vote of the remaining members of the commission. I wonder whether being an employee of the applicant should just be added as a conflict of interest. And again, I'm throwing this out there. I don't have an absolute ironclad opinion on it one way or the other.
I think that makes sense considering we've had that a few times over the years, and you know, then it doesn't leave to judgment the commission voting on it. It's just a simple recusal at that point, so that there is no perceived conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So in terms of the commission vote, it's been my understanding that the commission should actually vote on any potential conflict of interest. That the conflict that the plan commissioner is only allowed to abstain when the majority of the remainder of the commission agrees that they have a conflict by a vote. So I do understand. I agree that there's value in clarifying this. Where we've run into trouble is with larger companies. For example, one of in my consulting activities in the past, I've worked for a community that had a Dow chemical facility in it, and that facility wanted to do something that needed site plan approval, and one of our commissioners, I think actually more than one, was a Dow chemical employee. In the question they appropriately raised, you know, the question, do we have a conflict? They felt they did not. And in fact, the commissioners agree with them that they did not, that it had no financial bearing on them, whether this project was approved or not. It wasn't even their division. But even if it was their division, that it had no effect on their salary or financial compensation in any way, one way or the other. And in fact, that's been the direction I have received. I was surprised, Phil, to hear that they included employee on there as a kind of an absolute, because in some cases, you know, it simply has no bearing. I think in Alex's case, it does have bearing. McGurk is a significant company in the community, but it's still a smaller business, and his decisions do have direct bearing on the financial affairs of that business. So I think he quite rightly requests to abstain from activities associated with his employer. But on the other hand, if CMU came before us, you know, anything that was proposed, I don't think would necessarily create a conflict for our CMU employees, because it's simply so large of a business that it has no effect on the financial, your own personal finances, essentially. Just like that Dow case didn't, or the case downstate, Ford Motor Company, similarly. Ford Motor Company employee was found not to have a conflict, even though it was a Ford plant that was being worked on that needed site plan approval. So it's not quite as cut and dried with the employee element.
No, go ahead.
I agree with Rodney's kind of assessment. I mean, I agree actually with both sides. And I agree with Rodney's assessment that, we do have a fail-safe here. And I think it's quite easy to argue the reasonable appearance of a conflict of interest if somebody is an employee of, a particular company. I also understand the merit in saying, well, somebody may not always have a conflict of interest depending on the size of the organization. If you take that a step further, I think that the conflict of interest can arise depending on the seriousness and the scope of the request at hand, because anybody who's an employee can receive pressure from their employer if it's a serious enough issue. I guess I'm wondering is there a way that we can kind of compromise on that? And if in Rodney's example where there were multiple people who were Dow employees who were on the commission, is it even reasonable to limit, like if there's 3 people who are, or 4 people who are members of the commission who all work for CMU, for example, now you potentially could have a conflict just because it's kind of loaded in favor of that applicant. Is there any way to limit how many people may be employees that can vote, or is that just too sticky of a situation? It's either all or nothing on that sort of issue.
Yeah, it really is all or nothing. You can't say, okay, you have a conflict, but so and so does not, even though you both have the same concern. It really should be one way or the other. Lisa Cody has her hand raised.
Right. So Lisa.
Sometimes I think less is more. So to leave it out, I think is better. I think that's my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, with respect to CMU, depending on who was present, if CMU came with something, and if everybody who was employed by CMU had to, we could lose our quorum.
Right.
So I just want to make sure I understand something that Rodney said. Are you saying that items 1, 2, and 3, which are pretty cut and dried, that we should still be voting on those?
Well, as your bylaws are written, you would not need to vote on those. What I have seen typically with bylaws is that the vote is required for any potential conflict. Jessica Lapp, by the way, has her hand raised. But in this case, as your bylaws are written, the only vote would be is if it didn't fall into one of those 3 categories. I think this is fine. I don't recommend changing this format. But as I said, it's more common to see where basically the commission votes on any potential conflict.
Jessica?
I agree with Lisa. I think there are, the language as it's stated requires commissioners to recognize if they think they have a conflict, and then it's up to the other commissioners to determine if that conflict poses a problem or not. And the financial ones that are very clear, are stated very clearly there. I think a lot of other things are probably going to require the commissioners to determine in any given situation whether or not there exists a conflict. And I agree that if you start stipulating, then you are going to maybe back yourself into a corner in certain situations that you didn't intend.
Okay. Other comments or anything else that anyone wants to suggest and or discuss in the bylaws? Brian?
I just, one of them, I thought I had 2, but I don't know. This might be nitpicking. And so I'm just reading the letter of the law here. So I didn't know. Under motions on page 3 of the bylaws, it says motions shall be restated by the chairperson before a vote is taken. Do we need any clarification with that? Because now that we're getting guidance on our motions and we have fairly lengthy formal motions that we're making, is there any reason that we need to clarify that they can summarize the motion and they don't have to reread the same thing that might be, it takes a couple of minutes just to read some of those motions in the first place. I know that's nitpicking, but I didn't know if we need to clarify on that.
It would be appropriate if you wished to change the shall to may, to simply invites the chair to restate if needed.
Yeah.
Would agree to that.
I've been operating under the belief or position that as chair, I don't normally make motions. And so I've avoided having to read any of those lengthy motions. And so I'm wanting to keep it that way. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, you would either change shall to may, or you would find a different word for restated. But either way, I'm fine with either. Stan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think Jessica had hers up first.
Oh, okay. Jessica.
I was just gonna say, I think the intention there, I mean, the written motions are there for our review and we can all see them. I mean, part of the intention seems to be in the statement here that motions on the fly that just happen during the meeting, often the secretary may not be able to get all the details down. So I think it's important that the chair does repeat the motion with the people who support and seconded it, because I think that becomes part of the official record and helps confirm that for people who are taking notes. But because the formal motions for the business are already drafted, it's not necessary to repeat those because we already have a physical copy of those to all refer to. So it seems like that might have been written before Rodney and Peter were developing these motions for the
I think it definitely
commission.
was,
So.
yeah.
What if
I think
we,
just changing it to may makes a lot of sense, and that way the chair can decide which ones are important to repeat and which ones are unnecessary.
Yeah, and I think, isn't it, I mean, Robert's rules must say somewhere that a commissioner can always request that a motion be restated.
yes, that is true.
I'm sure that that's got to be in there.
Yeah.
So, all right. So yeah, shall to may. Good point. So then we'll come back to Stan.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I had a question about the quorum. And my thoughts are, it says 5 members of a 9-member commission. We were almost in a situation where we didn't have 9 members. If Denise didn't stay on the commission, we would not have had 9 members because she stayed on until we got to where the board appointed someone to replace her. So by virtue of how that's stated right now, it's 5 of a 9-person. If it's 8 individuals, of course, 5 is still the majority, but I don't know. It just seems to lack what's needed if we have less than 9 members, because 5 is the majority based on 9. There is no majority. Well, 5 is the majority based on 8 as well, but it seems like it's attempting to be simple majority based
So 4
on.
would be the majority if we were down 2 members.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So in this case, your quorum is actually set by the total membership. That's why the wording is like that. I agree. It could be made clear, but 5 is your quorum, no matter how many vacancies there may be.
But currently it says 5 members of a 9-member committee.
So
if we don't have a 9-member committee, then the bylaws can't constitute a 9-member committee if we don't have 9 members on the commission.
The appropriate action might be to actually delete the of a 9-member
Yes.
commission element, and just simply say 5 members shall constitute a quorum, because that is under state law the requirement.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to make sure. I thought I understood Rodney to be making a slightly different point, which was our commission is it's a 9-member commission because it's assigned to have 9 seats. And so that's why it's 5, because 5 is the majority of 9. It's irrelevant to that whether all of those seats are currently occupied. Is that what you were saying?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
It doesn't make any difference if there are vacancies or not. It's still, the quorum is based on those 9 seats, as you said.
Okay. So in fact, to Ryan's point, if we were ever down 2 members, and we're not talking, well, actually, yeah, so if we had, okay. Well, so there's different issues. There's actually when there's vacancies, and then there's when just people are absent. But I like the idea of 5 because it's, once you get below that, it's too few people making decisions.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and to my point, I'm good with the 5 members based on Rodney's, because you said we were required to have 5. Did you say state law?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, then I think that what's confusing is it talks about a 9-member board. Do we necessarily need to say that, or do we just say 5 members shall constitute the quorum?
Yeah, I think there's value in deleting the 9-member element. It just simply say 5 members of the commission, perhaps, shall constitute a quorum.
Because I would have never interpreted that as being state law. I would have just interpreted that as being simple majority.
Mhm.
And that's why I was posing the question of what if we were down, and we had 4 and 4, then obviously we wouldn't have a quorum. I mean, if we had 4 attending, 4 absent, then we would not have a quorum. But if it's by state law, then that would probably do it. And not, it's the first time we've ever discussed this, so didn't know that was state law.
All right, so the suggestion would be to replace a 9-member with the word "the."
No, I would just simply say 5 members shall constitute a quorum for transacting business. Or we could say, I'm sorry, you're saying 5 members of the commission?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah. Same, yeah.
Mayor.
Lisa.
So I went through this and I kind of compared it with the Michigan state law. I, compared the documents to kind of see the comparison, see if it's, and I mean, it comes down to the supervisor of the board of trustees. They should have 9 members at all times. And, we should never be short 2 members. So I don't think it's necessary to change it because we should always have 9 members. That's my opinion.
Dan?
I guess my thought was simply that the nine members is irrelevant if the 5-member quorum is by state law. Then it doesn't matter how many. If it's 5 members, because I thought it was 5 members because it was that was just the simple majority. But if it's state law,
it says 9, 7, and 5. It depends on how big the township is, if you're a charter, etc. So it's 9, 7, and 5, like the way it's written in the state. So if we are 9, it has to be 5, and if it's 7.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
So what's our pleasure? Is our pleasure to leave it as is, or is it to change it?
If I guess in my mind, if 5 is dictated by 9, then you leave 9 in. I just thought 5 was state law because it wasn't quantified in any way that one thing had anything to do with the other. And if that's the case, then it should stay in. Because then why wouldn't it be 7? Because the commission isn't.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming if we were a 7-member commission, then our quorum would be 4. Is that right or no? Lisa, do you know if that's true?
I mean, from the state law, we're required to have the 9, like the way it's, being the charter, being how big we are. And then the way our ordinances are written, it says 9. So, I mean, unless we change that, we need to fill our spots immediately. So,
Right. I was just curious if in townships where the planning commission can be 7 members, does 4 constitute a quorum? In other words, is the principle that it needs to be a majority of your size?
Yeah. Yes, that would be the 4.
Okay. All right. Jessica?
Never mind. I was just trying to think of alternate wording, but I think that just makes it worse.
Okay. Well, if we understand that we are a 9-member commission because of our size and because that's what we are. We're just like the Senate is a 100-member body. We are a 9-member body. That 5 members are always required for a quorum. I mean, if that's how we read it, then that's how we've been operating. But if that's how everyone reads it, then maybe we don't need to change it. I don't know. Is that okay? Leave it as is? Okay. All right. Any other things? Ryan?
I'm just curious, and I don't know, maybe it's just getting late. On page 4 under special rules, number 2, I'm just curious about the wording. A motion to reconsider any action may be taken by the commission may be made only on the day such action was taken. It may be either made immediately during the same session or at a recessed or adjourned session thereof. I'm kind of curious what that means, recessed or adjourned session. And then I'm also, just for my own curiosity, I'm curious why the motion to reconsider can only be made by the prevailing side. Why would the prevailing side of a motion, if you voted in favor of a motion, why would you then turn around and ask to reconsider that? Why wouldn't it be why wouldn't someone who had voted not on the prevailing side have the right to make a motion to reconsider? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but this is like straight out of Robert's rules, right?
Okay. Okay.
Because I remember this came up once at CMU at this academic senate, and it was only a person that had supported the original motion could make the motion to reconsider.
So essentially, if somebody has supported the original motion but maybe has second thoughts now, they can ask to reconsider it, to give them perhaps an opportunity to vote against it if a new motion is made. I guess, I mean, if it's right out of Robert's rules, what is meant when they say this, a recessed or adjourned session thereof? I mean, if it has to be the same day, and the motion can be made immediately during the same session, what does it mean to be recessed or adjourned session?
That I don't know. Lisa?
So like the county, they have 2 separate meetings on the same topics. So maybe it means that part, because they discuss it, deliberate, and then they take action on the next meeting. So maybe it kind of refers back to that. I did read over this and I looked up the wording in it, and it's the same as the Michigan law. That's what one of the things I looked up when I was looking over it. And then
So
it had a point for the county, and then, so I don't know, maybe that's referring to the county part.
So perhaps it's just not really pertinent to us at this point, but there may be a day or time in the future when we do have more than one session in a given day, and that would be applicable in that particular situation. That seems to make sense. I was just confused by that. I think that's a good enough explanation for me.
At some point, maybe I'll do what they do in Congress. And every time a motion is passed, the first thing they say is the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table without objection or something like that. All right. Others? So the plan is to bring this back with the suggested or the changes that we've suggested to bring this back at our next meeting. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Very nice. Others? Okay. Well, thanks for that discussion. That was good. So we do have on here master plan implementation. So I'll just ask, has there been, in the last 2 weeks, have there been any revelations or thoughts from anyone on the master plan implementation? Okay. If not, I'm fine to roll it over until our next meeting. Anything new for that you want to make us aware of on that?
Well, actually, I just was talking today, this morning with the representative from the Home Builders Association. They are having they're having an event. It's going to take place in person, but there'll also be access via Zoom or one of the formats like that, where they're going to be talking about housing issues in the state. They have the Home Builders Association of Michigan has presented a letter to the governor and also to the state legislature outlining 15 recommendations for essentially for changes at the state level to support housing choice and to help alleviate some of the housing challenges we have right now. That letter came out last fall. I'd never heard about it at the time. I just found out about it. If you'd like, I can share the letter with you. I've received a copy of it, and I can also share the information on how to access this event that they're holding on April 12th. Where they'll be hearing from some legislators and discussing some of the things, at least from the Home Builders Association, some of their concerns. Is that something that would interest you?
Yeah, I think that's worth sharing.
Okay. I will pass that on, both items. So you'll have their recommendations and also how to sign up for that little event on April 12th.
Okay. I mean, it's as far as you know, it's open to the public, or it's open to people like us, or what?
Yeah. It's actually it's open to the HBA members, but it's also open to non-members. And it's a seminar basically looking at policy direction. And my understanding is as I said, we're going to have some legislators there who will speak on the issue. It's early in the morning, 7:45 a.m., about 45 minutes long, free event, and it's open to basically interested parties. So they had no issue with allowing me to join, and so I'll share it with you, and you're welcome to check in with them on that.
Okay, very good. Okay. So if there aren't any other comments on the master plan implementation, Lisa?
I have a question. I don't know if I'm going to say it right though. Okay, so when we were doing master plan, we were talking about sidewalks in the mobile home parks, but they have their own rules, and we were supposed to be reaching out to them. Have we heard it back from them yet?
So the state mobile home commission has established rules for the mobile home parks, and they are very specific. We have no control over them. We have no say. We really can't change what they have set down for what how the sidewalks can be constructed in the mobile home parks. Those rules, I think, quite frankly, violate the Americans with Disabilities Act, but the mobile home industry is still remarkably one of the strongest lobbying interests in Lansing, and they have been very careful to protect their turf and prevent any alteration to those requirements. So we just have really nothing to say. The only area where we can have any impact is really the public sidewalk along within the road right of way. That's about it.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on that? Okay, so we'll, that'll come back on our next agenda, but so be giving thought and we'll continue to seek comments. Other business, is there any other business that needs to come before us tonight that anyone is aware of? Okay, hearing none. Then we'll move to extended public comment. So this is the portion of the meeting where individuals are invited to address the Planning Commission on any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not. Again, hit your raise hand button to be recognized and give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 5 minutes on any issue. Extended public comment is open at 8:39. And our attendees room is empty, so we'll assume that they've gone on to do other things. So we'll go ahead and close the extended public comment also at 8:39. Final board comment. Any comments from board members? Well, the next time we see each other, it'll be April, so enjoy that. It'll be well into April. It'll be hopefully pretty warm by then. So if not, we've completed our agenda for tonight, and our next meeting is our regular meeting on April 20th. So we'll see you all then. So we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.